the pitch cracks are more of a nuisance. If you had beams in your home, you would have maybe some pitch dripping from the ceiling and on your carpet if in green lumber. If it's kiln dried, the pitch sets and you're good to go that way. And spiral grain. This really isn't a structural problem as much as it is an aesthetic problem. What happens with spiral grain, anyone ever wondered why some posts and some beams corkscrew and others don't? Here's what after working with this and wondering and asking, here's the best answer that I have. We've got a timber with heart in it. So one of the things that a timber with heart in it will do is it will check, one face will check to the heart. The rest of the checks will be rather small, but one face will check to the heart and it'll open up big. And if there is sloped grain, so spiral grain to the beam, if you've got this face here, the grain slopes, and then this starts checking. This face decides to check. Every time it checks, it just kind of like a wrench or a ratchet, yeah. Just tweaks till it's done checking, and then you're done corkscrewing.
Unless it's hemlock, then it'll just keep right on going.
Yeah. Okay. So we covered the lateral bracing, tension loads, and then aero design eliminates OBS. And it was a while ago my guy had done this. It was something like overloaded beam syndrome or something. Because I mean, if I'm left to my own devices when the project's on the drawing board, it'll be big and it'll be heavy. And I can do delicate, intricate, embellished beams and perfectly proportioned timbers if that's what the client wants, but coming right out of the chute, left to my own devices, it'll be big, it'll be heavy, it'll be strong. And so that pretty much wraps up the presentation on critical factors. And I've got pictures and books here you can come up and take a look at. We just kind of have informal questions. Yes?
We had issues on some of ours, and I usually don't get to do that many plans because I have to spend more time out in the field now, but we've had some where we had a lateral done by an engineer, and then they give us the engineered trusses, and the laterals is a framed brace system and stuff like that. And then we have some of this timber frame, but there's no engineering for it. Sometimes they'll say, well, it's decorative, but sometimes it's not quite decorative because it carries a little bit of the roof load, and then how it connects back to the structure. And I was just wondering how you present, or do you get involved in the presentation to the building department, and how does that usually work?
A lot of times I will, and what I do is I just draw up connection details. It's pretty basic. I mean, you guys got to get a good connection and understand what you're trying to do as far as
it's like too where you have that big overhang like that. I suppose that needs to be engineered, right? So I mean, when you have a big canopy entrance, but then how it ties back into the structure and how it
definitely,
structure.
you gotta address the connections.
Most of the time, my experience with this stuff, I'll share, is when they're doing a separate structure, it's like an entry or a porch or a back deal like that, I've generally had design criteria for that. I've done some of the timber frame houses where they have the timber frame and then like the foam panels that secure to it. And they're two separate structures. And what I found that's missing is the connection from one structure to the other.
Right.
I'll have a lot of really good design stuff for the timber frame portion of it, and I have a lot of good design stuff for all the stands and all the panels and everything else, but how they connect and the schedule for which they connect is generally missing.
Yeah, and I think what happens is, okay, you design the bracing or what have you for the front end of it, And the back end of it, the lateral loads go into the main structure.
Wall, yeah.
And how they, yeah, or you might even have some overturning, and you might have some rotation, you know,
Right.
and so forth. And sometimes that's not always detailed, how it goes into the main structure and gets distributed that way.
Especially if like Jim had said, where there's a SIPS manufacturer and a
Right,
timber
Yeah.
provider, two different providers.
right,
They're
There's a
going like
way
this, by
yeah.
others.
right, exactly. No, it's engineering here,
Yeah.
engineering
Well,
there.
others-
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
By others.